The train screeched against the frozen rails as it came to a halt, steam hissing into the air like a beast exhaling its final breath. Snow fell in thick, silent sheets, swirling in the wind that howled down from the mountains. Coldwater Station stood like a relic lost in time, frosted, forgotten, frozen. A woman stepped off the last car. She moved slowly, deliberately, her boots crunching into the snow. A black veil obscured her face. No one met her gaze, but every eye followed her. She carried no trunk, no words, and no expression. The silence she brought was not empty. It was heavy, like thunder before a storm. In the winter of 1873, a woman stepped off the train in Coldwater, Montana. She said nothing, not a single word. But from the moment she arrived, silence became the loudest thing in town. The camera panned slowly, boots in the snow, gloved hands clutching a worn satchel, a wind-torn veil lifting just enough to reveal a pale, set jaw. Her name was Eliza Maren, 27, a widow from Missouri, they said. She was dressed plainly, hands rough but steady. Her eyes were dark and bottomless, not from color but from memory. When she walked into town, no smile or nod greeted her. Instead, murmurs curled in her wake. Is she mute? She one of those women who got sold? She's Harold Granger's bride, ain't she? Harold Granger was a rancher known more for losing cattle than winning hearts. He'd placed an ad in some eastern paper, offering land, food, and shelter to any decent woman who could cook, sew, and handle silence. Eliza answered with no reply, just an acceptance and a date of arrival. He met her at the station with a wagon hitched to a single black mare. No handshake, just a nod. She climbed aboard, and they rode off through the white prairie, swallowed by wind and stillness. The ranch sat on the edge of Coldwater's reach, timber-lined hills on one side, snowdrifts and broken fence posts on the other. The house was solid if stern, like Harold himself. He led her inside, gestured toward the stove, the pantry, and the spare room. I don't expect chatter, he muttered. But I do expect contribution. Eliza said nothing. Not a nod. Not a shrug. She unpacked her single satchel and lit the fire. Harold was a man of habits, not emotions. He spoke when needed, worked from dawn to dusk, and left Eliza mostly alone. But her silence began to gnaw at him. He would speak to her at supper. Simple things, weather, tools, broken fence lines, and she would stare or look away, never blinking, never flinching. Are you deaf? He asked once. She didn't answer. Are you dumb? Still, nothing. That night he stood outside with a bottle of rye, staring at the stars like they owed him answers. Inside, Eliza sat beside the fire, hands folded in her lap. A low, echoing scream played behind her eyes, one only she could hear. In flickering visions, flames licked at floorboards. A child cried. A man called her name. Then silence. Awful. Roaring silence. Blood in the snow. A ring in the ashes. She blinked, and the images were gone. The only sound now was the pop of firewood. She worked, she cooked, she mended, and she wandered. Into the woods, toward the hills, watching everything, saying nothing. The townsfolk took notice. Creepy, that one. She walked like a ghost, doesn't even smile. One morning the wind carried a sharper bite. Eliza hauled a pail of water from the frozen pump, her fingers red and cracked. She fed the chickens, repaired the barn latch, then attempted to split kindling. The axe was dull, but she didn't stop. That's when the wolf appeared. It stood yards away, gray, lean, hungry. Eyes locked on her. She held the axe, chest rising and falling in shallow rhythm. She didn't scream, didn't run. She stepped forward. The wolf snarled. She raised the axe, and the beast hesitated. For one breathless moment, it was unclear who was predator and who was prey. Then the wolf backed away into the trees, vanishing like mist. From the edge of the forest, someone had been watching. She saw him the next morning, a tall figure between the pines, silent as snowfall. A native man, maybe in his 30s, long, braid over one shoulder. He didn't approach, just stood there, watching. That evening, a bundle of dried herbs and smoked meat appeared on the porch. Eliza looked toward the trees and saw him again. He gave a small nod. She didn't return it, but she didn't turn away either. Harold came home late, noticed the package. "Takoda," he grunted. "One of the last from the Blacktail band. Keeps to himself. Don't get ideas. They got their ways, and we got ours." But Eliza didn't care for boundaries carved by men. She kept working, and Takoda kept watching. Then came town day. Harold needed supplies and took her along. She wore her veil. In the general store, the townsfolk stared like they'd never seen a woman before. Outside, as Harold haggled over salt and seed, Eliza stood alone by the hitching post. Snow crunched behind her. "Hey, quiet girl," a voice slurred. 3 men approached, settlers with whiskey on their breath and malice in their eyes. "You speak English?" one said. "Or do you just do as you're told?" She didn't respond. Maybe she don't talk 'cause she's hiding something. One reached out, grabbed her arm. Hard. Still, she said nothing. She looked him in the eyes. Calm, cold, unmoving. "Creepin'. Me out this one," another muttered. Then a shadow fell across them. Takoda. He stepped forward, slow and quiet, a knife at his belt, hand resting casually near it. He said nothing. The threat in his eyes said everything. The man let go. "I don't want trouble with no savages," he muttered, backing away. The other 2 followed. Eliza looked up at Takoda. Their eyes met. No words passed, but something did. Recognition. Not of name or place, but of pain. A mutual understanding shaped not by speech but by silence. And in that silence, something deeper began to stir. The wind carried the scent of pine and ice the morning Takoda returned. In his hands, a bundle of roots, dried leaves, and a satchel of soft-smelling herbs. Eliza stood on the porch, her cheek dark with bruising, lips split from the rough grip of the man in town. She didn't flinch when Takoda approached. He knelt near the steps, pulled a small clay pot from his satchel, and set to work grinding and mixing without saying a word. She watched. When he reached for her chin, she didn't pull away. The fire crackled from inside the house. A crow called somewhere beyond the hills. Takoda dipped 2 fingers into the paste and gently dabbed it along the cut on her mouth. His touch was soft, more careful than any Eliza had known. Not once did he meet her eyes, but when he was done, she looked at him. Really looked. And something in her eyes flickered. It wasn't trust. Not yet. But it was the beginning. That night, as snow fell heavy outside, Eliza dreamed again. Flames. Black smoke curling toward a night sky. Her daughter, Lena, coughing in the cradle. Her husband, Nathan, shouting over the roar, "Get her out, Eliza, get her." But Eliza's legs wouldn't move. Her hands reached through the fire, but it swallowed her. She screamed, so loud, so long that her throat cracked, her voice tore. And then, nothing. No sound. Just ash and silence. In the morning, she'd found herself alone in the snow, her dress scorched, her skin blistered. A charred locket dangled from her hand, still closed. Inside, a faded drawing of Lena's face. She buried them behind the ruins, wrapped in canvas and prayer, but not a word passed her lips. From that day on, her silence wasn't from damage, it was a vow. Eliza stirred awake in her cot, sweat dampening her collar. The fire had burned low. Outside, wind scraped across the windows. She pressed the carving of the deer Takoda had left, earlier into her palm, clutching it like it could hold her together. Later that week, Harold saw Takoda leaving the porch again. This time, the man had left fish wrapped in broadleaf and a pouch of cedar dust. Harold's face tightened. "You don't owe him anything," he told Eliza that night chopping wood, near the barn. "We help our own, not those who live in shadows." Eliza, as always, said nothing. But when she walked past him carrying the water pail, Harold stopped and looked at her. Really looked. Her eye was still faintly purple. The scar on her wrist, one he hadn't noticed before, caught the light. "I saw my brother shot in Antietam," he said quietly. "He died in a creek face down. Took me 2 days to find what was left." He set the axe down. "I didn't talk for 6 months. Folks thought I'd lost my mind. Maybe I did." Eliza paused. Their eyes met just for a breath, and something passed between them. Not sympathy, not even understanding, but a recognition. The sound of silence echoing between two broken people. When the blizzard came, it swallowed the sky without warning. White walls slammed down across the plains, winds howling like banshees. Harold and Eliza had gone into the woods earlier to retrieve the trap lines. Takoda had been hunting nearby. By dusk, the three of them found themselves huddled in an old lean-to, logs cracking under the weight of snow. The cold was merciless. Fingers went numb. Water froze in canteens. Harold struggled to keep the fire alive while Eliza unpacked what little food remained. Takoda returned with a rabbit and flint. There were no words, but everything moved in rhythm. Eliza started the stew. Harold blocked drafts with pelts. Takoda sharpened sticks into makeshift spears. Time passed not by clocks, but by breaths. 3 days into the storm, while scouting the ice-covered ridge behind the lean-to, Harold slipped. The ice cracked like glass. He fell, half-buried, arm pinned beneath a branch. His cries were hoarse. Takoda and Eliza heard him, rushed toward the sound. Eliza reached him first, crawling across the frozen slope. She tied a rope around her waist, handed the other end to Takoda, and moved carefully out onto the thinner ice. Crack. Another snap. Every inch a gamble. She reached Harold and with raw hands dug him free. They hauled him back just as the ridge collapsed behind them. Coldwater nearly claimed another soul. That night, Eliza sat beside the fire, hands trembling. Takoda reached into his satchel again. From it he pulled a carved figure, delicate, smooth, the shape of a deer. He placed it on the floor beside her boots, then sat across the fire, wordless. Eliza stared at the carving. In Blacktail legend, the deer was a symbol of resilience, of quiet strength, of watching everything and in speaking nothing. She picked it up gently, then she smiled. A faint small curve of the mouth, but real. Still, no words. Coldwater slept under a heavy blanket of silence. The town was used to quiet, used to whispers and the hush of wind between buildings. But even the bitter wind couldn't mask the sound of horses arriving that morning. 6 of them, riders cloaked in oilskin, their coats stained with mud and blood, guns at their sides. They stopped in the square, just outside the general store. Harold stood on the porch of the supply shed when he saw them, eyes narrowed, jaw clenched. He knew their kind. Eliza was gathering salt from the barrels when she heard the voice, deep, slow, heavy with menace. "Well, hellfire, if it ain't the mute little widow from Missouri." She froze. A tall man stepped forward, face thin, nose crooked from too many brawls. Colt Danner. The last time Eliza had seen him, he was laughing in a burning barn, torch in one hand, bottle in the other. He and his gang had raided their home in Missouri. He'd taken what he wanted, food, horses, and nearly her. Nathan had fought back, paid the price. Eliza's hand trembled as she dropped the sack of salt. Colt smiled. "Didn't think you'd crawl this far west. Still quiet as a corpse, I see." She backed up slowly. Her foot caught the edge of the crate. Then, Takoda stepped forward. He emerged from the shadows beside the store, cloak brushing the dirt. His face was calm, but his hand rested near his belt, just above the knife Eliza had seen flash once before. Colt glanced at him, scowled, then chuckled. "You trading one savage for another now?" No one laughed with him. Eliza's eyes darted to Takoda's. Searching for something, an anchor, she found it. The town was in danger, and for the first time Eliza wasn't running from it. The town of Coldwater stood still, cloaked in a tension thicker than snowdrifts. Colt Danner and his bandits had given them 24 hours. By dusk the next day, they'd return and take what they wanted. No one doubted that included blood. Harold stood in the church hall, worn hat in hand. Around him a dozen men, farmers, traders, an old soldier who walked with a limp, faces pale, eyes uncertain. "They'll ride through us like we're kindling," someone muttered. "Then let's not stand where the fire burns hottest," Harold said, pointing at the table. "We use the terrain, the hills, the woods. We don't meet 'em head on." Eliza stepped forward, rolled out a worn piece of paper, a hand-drawn map, sharp, detailed. She pointed at choke points near the frozen creek, paths hidden in brush. "She knows this land better than any of us," Harold said. "She was a trapper's wife once. She knows how to outlast a predator." The room quieted. No one questioned her silence anymore. That night, lanterns flickered as the town prepared. Eliza set snares near the tree line. Takoda moved through the woods like wind, placing sharpened stakes, loose rock triggers, simple deadfalls. The cold bit at their fingers, but neither paused. When dawn came, the snow glowed blood orange under the rising sun. Hooves broke the morning stillness. They were here. Gunfire shattered the calm. Men scrambled behind barrels and fences. The first wave of bandits charged, yelling, firing. One dropped from a trap, yanked into a pit. Another's horse stumbled over a concealed snare. Screams echoed off the buildings. Takoda moved like shadow between the trees. His bow sang. 1 arrow, 2, 3. A man fell with a scream cut short. Another gasped and hit the ground, clutching his chest. Harold, shotgun in hand, held the front steps of the general store. He shot twice before a bullet struck his side. He dropped, groaning. Eliza saw him fall. Without hesitation, she ran, bullets whipping past her. She dragged him behind cover, hands slick with blood. "You're bleeding," she mouthed. He managed a faint smile. "You're talking now," he rasped. She looked at him, then turned, as the sound of boots crunched behind her. Colt. He stepped through the smoke, rifle at his side, grin sharp and venomous. "Told you I'd find you," he said. Missouri wasn't enough, was it? Eliza stood slowly. Colt raised his gun, lazily but didn't fire. "You gonna scream this time?" he sneered. "Beg me?" She didn't move. He stepped closer. "Still broken, huh?" He struck her across the face, open palm, hard enough to knock her sideways. Blood bloomed on her lip again, hot and sharp. But this time, she didn't fall. She stood, steady, and from somewhere deep in her chest, beneath ash and grief, beneath everything she'd buried, came her voice. "No," she whispered. Colt blinked. "I'm going to end this." Then she took his gun and pulled the trigger. The shot echoed down the street, loud and final. Colt dropped. His body hit the snow like a felled tree. Silence fell, the kind that weighs heavy, the kind after thunder. And for the first time in years, it felt like peace. The battle didn't last long after that. The rest of the bandits scattered. A few surrendered. The townspeople emerged from hiding, their breath fogging in the cold air, faces pale with disbelief. Harold lived. The bullet had missed anything vital. Eliza helped stitch him, silent again, but steady. When the dust settled, Takoda stood at the edge of town, watching. He didn't come forward, didn't ask for thanks. He simply turned and disappeared into the forest. Later, on her porch, Eliza found one final gift, another carving, this one of a bear, strong, silent, unbroken. She pressed it to her chest. Morning broke clear a few days later. Snow gleamed gold beneath a rising sun. Eliza stood by the wagon, her satchel packed. Harold limped out to meet her. "You don't have to go," he said quietly. "You've earned a place here, maybe even beside me." She reached out, took his hand. No words, just warmth. Then she let go and walked away toward the horizon, into a land still harsh, still wild, but one she no longer feared. A locket hung at her neck. Inside, Lena's face, smiling. Eliza was no longer silent because she was broken. Now, her silence was her strength. Her choice. In a land of thunder and silence, her voice echoed not in words, but in the lives she changed. The wind picked up behind her, and she didn't look back. Voiceover. Sometimes the loudest stories are told in silence. If Eliza's journey moved you, give this video a like. Share it with someone who believes in strength through silence, and subscribe for more powerful stories from the forgotten frontiers. The screen fades to black, the soft strains of a mournful fiddle playing beneath the final frame.